Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Felix here with your Word on the Street, and today we're continuing our study into the book of the Revelation of Jesus Christ, specifically through the seven bowl judgments. And if you recall from our previous teachings, we had gone over the first and the second bowl judgments, those being sores poured out over the world, causing extreme pain and no relief upon the Antichrist and his followers, and how the seas of the world turned to blood, killing all the sea life, leaving no food in the oceans to eat. So we're going to continue. Let's open up our Bibles to Revelation chapter 16, verses 4 to 7, to a teaching entitled The Third Bowl Judgment, The Waters Turn to Blood. And here the Apostle John, he writes, "Then the third angel poured out his bowl on the rivers and springs of water, and they became blood. And I heard the angel of the water saying, 'You are righteous, O Lord, the one who is, and who was, and who is to be, because you have judged these things. For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and you have given them blood to drink, for it is their just due.'" And then he finishes off in verse 7, he says, "And I heard another from the altar saying, 'Even so, Lord God Almighty, true and righteous are your judgments.'" So this passage here, earlier in the chapter, a voice declared that the bowls are the wrath of God that will be poured out upon the people of disobedience and the ungodly and the evil people who took the mark of the beast and worshiped the image. And people have lived and really continue to live in disobedience to God. And He has stored up the punishment that they have earned, okay? It's all on them. But He's been patient. He will deliver His wrath to those who do not believe in Him, including the city of Babylon, which represents the rebellion against God throughout the world. And in the previous teachings, we heard about the disasters that will happen to the sea. But now we hear John say in verse 4 that the third angel poured out his bowl on the rivers and the springs of water, and they become blood. So it specifically deals with like all of the fresh water on earth, okay? And if we all know fresh water is as absolutely essential to life. I mean, we could afford to skip a few meals of food here and there, but without water, death is imminent. You know, I sometimes hear from people, how could a God who claims to love the world destroy the world? And this is an example of questioning from people who may usually not understand like the attributes of God, or an example of a God who does not really fit into their finite box that they've placed him in. The God of creation is neither of those, okay? But we can read in the next passage here two reasons why God is going to pour His wrath out upon the earth and destroy it. John says in verse 5, he says, "And I heard the angel of the water saying, 'You are righteous, O Lord, the one who is, and who was, and who is to be, because you have judged these things. For they have shed the blood of the saints and the prophets, and you have given them blood to drink, for it is their just due.' And I heard from the altar saying, 'Even so, Lord God Almighty, true and righteous are your judgments.'" And this passage right here in Revelation, it's similar to in Revelation chapter 7, verse 1. John wrote about, he says, "After these things I saw four angels standing at the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, the sea, or on any tree." Okay? So angels have dominion over that because God gives them to them. Okay? And we see here, because of the millions of martyrs that have been killed during the Great Tribulation, those who come to the Lord, or even who didn't even simply follow the Antichrist or worship the image or take the mark of the beast, they're going to be killed. And John used the words saints and prophets in verse 6. Saints, they're defined as those who are set apart. That's what it means, because of their relationship with knowing and living for Jesus. And the prophets are God's spokesmen. And if we recall throughout human history, okay, saints and prophets have been martyred for their faith, and especially more so here during the time of the Great Tribulation. And then secondly, because God is true and righteous. You know, there comes a time when enough is enough. And it's evident that God has had enough here, because God is true and righteous. He's going to to execute his wrath upon all of the ungodliness and all of the evil of the world and destroy it. And this is really similar to Exodus chapter 7, verse 19, where God had told Moses, he says, to say to Aaron, take your rod and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their streams, over their rivers, and over their ponds, and over all of the pools of water, that they may become blood. And there shall be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, both in buckets of wood and pitchers of stone. You know, another verse about the judgments of God here, the psalmist actually wrote that God would execute righteousness and judgment for all of the oppressed, because his judgments are upright and holy are his works. The bowl judgments will be methodical, and they're going to be precise in these last days. Revelation chapter 16, verses 4 to 7, the third bowl judgment, the waters turn to blood, and that's your word on the street.